Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be talking about the RTX 4060s. These are the MSRP ones, the aftermarket, more expensive ones. They're going to be tomorrow, depending on when you're watching the video, or they're live now, depending on. But I have two of the £289 cards here, or $299, and I have the Windforce. Is it Windforce? Yes, they call it the Windforce overclock from Gigabyte, and then I have the dual overclock from Asus. Again, both exactly the same price, MSRP, but slightly different performance, as you'll see in a little bit. Something I do want to clarify right from the very start is this does only have 8GB. The 3060 that it replaces was 12. Now that card was technically designed as a 6, but they doubled it up for VRAM, and it was part of the them trying to keep up with AMD, because AMD were putting loads of VRAM on cards. And then they did release a 6 one later, but it was kind of pointless. And anyway, so now I am going to say right from the get-go that it would have been nice if this did have 12 or maybe 16GB of VRAM, just for a little bit more lifespan on them, so that you might have been able to have played the games for that little bit longer. And you know, I'm saying that, we're getting that out the way, but we do also need to remember it's £289, and the world has changed an awful lot since the 3060. Even the cardboard that these boxes are made from is probably nigh on 80% more expensive than it would have been when the 3060 came out. So things have got much more expensive. Now we do also need to remember that we've obviously got DLSS has got a lot more mature now, which is going to put less of an impact on the DRAM, because with the DLSS it's not going to sit in the VRAMs. But if you turn on frame generation, that goes the opposite way, and it does use a little bit more VRAM. So it does put the 8GB in a strange place. Now, at the moment, with the test suite that I've got, I haven't run out on VRAM on any of the games. It hasn't become a problem at 1080p. You also need to remember that if you are running 1080p and you turn DLSS on, it is technically then, with most games, going to go down to like 1280 or something, or 1650, and then it gets upscaled. So you're rendering a much smaller frame, and that is why you use less VRAM. So these are things to consider. Now, I am not doing this to stand up for NVIDIA or anything like that. I just think we need to remember that if you have a 12GB 3060, then you're probably not going to be looking at buying one of these anyway. These are going to be people coming in at the maybe building a rig for a son, or their very first, and they've got to do it on a budget because of cost of living. And these are the cards that are available. There aren't going to be other ones. Should you go and buy a 3060 12GB? Well, you can look in my graphs. One of the things I will say is, in the graphs, sadly, when we completely retested recently with this brand new test rig with a 13900K, we tested the 3060 Ti and not a 3060 vanilla, because there wasn't a 3060 Founders. So we tested the Ti, which was the Founders that I had. So it's not been taken out of the graphs, and we've not missed it purposely. It's just you can't test every single card in the stack with the amount of cards that NVIDIA makes. So we tested what we had. And as you can see in the graphs, there are an awful lot of them. Also, I have to say, like, I don't like all the pessimism in the industry at the moment, because I feel like it's just putting people off. Yes, it's not ideal. Prices are going up throughout with everything. Like, the memory chips are more expensive, the plastic's more expensive, the labour and the tooling to make them is more, everything is more expensive. So to try and get a card at around the same sort of performance, maybe a bit better, as you'll see in the graphs, uses less power and has some new technologies with it as well, there are some nice things. It's not the same card rebadged. And I think that's something also that we need to remember. That has happened a lot in the past, and it isn't with this. So I'm going to try and stay on the air of positivity, not for shilling, not for the fact that, you know, NVIDIA don't want me to say stuff, because no one cares. I can say what I want. It's just that I want to live in a bright and airy world where we're all happy, because at the moment, with all due respect, if we carry on the way that we're going, moaning about everything, we might as well just not bother anymore. And I don't want that. I actually like the gaming industry and what it can bring to the table. Sure, it would be lovely if Nvidia put a bit more stuff on the cards. Could they afford it? Probably. But what you don't understand is if they start doing that, it's actually going to squeeze these manufacturers even more, and they struggle to make them at MSRP as it stands at the moment anyway. Nvidia can make MSRP cards because they make all the stuff themselves. When people like Gigabyte and Asus and all of the other brands have to buy the chips in, their window of opportunity for actually being able to make money is drastically reduced. And that's something we do also need to remember, is everyone needs to make money. If they don't, they'll go out of business. And then you don't get any cards. And if there are less manufacturers out there selling less cards, either the cards are going to go up because of, you know, there's just not enough of them, and we've been through that and we don't want that anymore, or Nvidia are just going to start charging more. And it's a big political, horrible, spawning cauldron of not niceness, but we have to try and, or I want to try and stay on the positive side of things wherever I can. So, the two cards, both exactly the same price, but not the same size. It's quite easy to see that the Gigabyte here is significantly smaller. That does mean that the heatsink is significantly smaller. It does technically mean it would fit in a slightly smaller case, which could be a good thing. But in this time, it's not. It's not a good thing because the cooler technically isn't big enough. Why is it not big enough? Well, if you think about it, we've got 3 fans in the roof, 3 fans in the front, big airy case. 7600. It's because I want to start talking 7600. 760T. I can't even remember now. I'm having a brain fart. Anyway, big Corsair case. Big Corsair case with lots of airflow, and the Gigabyte really struggled for temps. It's only got a little baby 8-pin. The plastic backplate, plastic everywhere. It is dual fan, but it really struggled for temps. It was consistently hitting 80 degrees, and then the fans were spinning up to keep it at 80 degrees. And that was not the hotspot. The hotspot was at 99 degrees. I ended up turning the fan on this up to 100%, and it only just managed to keep it in the 70s. You got the odd flick where it went down to like 69.8 or something, but for the most part, this sat at 70 degrees at 100% fans in this high airflow case. Now, yes, it's small, but imagine if you put this in a small case with one fan blowing in the front or something, it's going to get even warmer and performance will drop off. We were at the point with this where, yes, it had got to 80 degrees, but rather than the temps going up, the fans just got louder instead. So this is something you genuinely need to consider, especially when, as you've seen in the graph, that the Asus, and it's not, you could put an MSI badge on that, you could put a Gamewood badge on that, I don't care who made it. This one is the one that I would not buy temperature-wise at the moment. It's just too warm. The cooler on it cannot cope with what's going on underneath it. And I think that's clearly seen by the fact it was consistently hitting 80, even in a ginormous case like this. The Asus itself, it is big, and it was, I have to say, it was a little bit bigger and nicer looking than I was expecting for an MSRP card. You've got these nice little smoked windows on it, big fans, big cooler. I'd almost go as far as to say, I reckon that was their 4060 Ti design or something, and it's just been reused. Metal backplate, it ticks all the boxes. Like I said, don't care what the brand is, it's just nicer than that one. I don't normally say that because I actually do like the Gigabyte cards normally, but the thermals on this, for me, are an issue, especially in something like that. We haven't had cards at stock running so hot in such a long time. Now, power-wise, they both just sit on the power. The graph that you can see is the entire system, because we don't separate it out. We test them real world like this in the system like you would at home. So they really don't use a lot of power. They don't use a lot of power compared to the 3600 Ti. They don't use a lot of power compared to the RX 7600. So that is something that is worth noting with this, because at the end of the day, if they don't use a lot of power like that, that does mean that your power supply requirements are going to be greatly reduced. You could comfortably go and buy yourself a 450 watt power supply and power your entire system without any worries. The only thing that I would say though is when you do go down to a small wattage power supply like that, don't cut corners. Make sure you get yourself something that is from a proper brand. Like, I'm not going to go through them all because I get told off if I forget one, but from one of the proper power supply brands. What you need to remember is with a power supply, if it does go wrong and it does go pop, it can kill everything that is... That's unfortunate. That was actually the AMD rep phoning me. So yes, I'll have to ring him back in a moment. Yes, 450 watt power supply. Make sure you buy a decent brand, because if it does go wrong, it can kill everything it's connected to, and the power supply brand will not pay for all of your hardware. So it's just not worth cutting the corner on that component, I'm afraid. I'm personally a case of power supply and cooling is something that I always try. Keep things cooler so they're quieter, spend a bit more money on the power supply. It doesn't need to be more wattage, just maybe a better brand, maybe a better rating, because at this end of the market, if you are going to be not cutting corners, but trying to keep your costs down, you could end up paying your costs later on by using more energy as well. So that's something to consider as well, with everything costing more at the moment. Now, performance-wise, I have already said there is no 3060 in the graph. If you go back to our older reviews when we've relaunched all this with a brand new test rig, it's never been there. It hasn't been planned. It's just unfortunate, and this is the one review that I thought to myself, this is going to be the one where people really moan at me about it because it's not there. But when we tested all those like 24, 26 graphics cards, whatever it was, and we did that recently, it just wasn't one that we had to hand to be able to do it with. So I would say we have done 1440 results. If you want to go and have a look on the website, you can go and see all the graphs over there as well. But I see this as being a 1080p card, and a healthy 1080p card as well. One of the things I will also say is, obviously with ray tracing, it's a big ask for something like this, but having DLSS does make a decent dent in dragging the frames back up to keep them well over 60 frames per second. So a lot of the games can even be seen there at 100 and 100 plus for a card that's 289. I mean, it wasn't that long ago where if we started turning ray tracing on and all those other bits and bobs, you were talking about needing a high 70 or an 80 card to have even been able to have coped with it. So things have moved along quite nicely, and it is nice that we're getting decent things like DLSS 3 with these cards, and I can see a light coming on the camera telling me I'm running out of battery. So there are lots of 1080p results. There was one where the 7600 from AMD beat this, and it was Modern Warfare 2. Here's that graph. That is the one graph out of all of the tests that we have done where the AMD 7600 does beat the NVIDIA. Now we need to remember, yes, all right, you can turn DLSS on and the performance goes up, but I'm stressing that point so people can't say I've missed it, and people can't say that I've left it out on purpose, because I really don't care. But the other side of the 7600 is, I have just looked online and you can get them from 249. The Sapphire Pulse is available at select websites online at the moment at 250 quid. So that is £30 below one of these. All you need to decide at that point, if you do you don't care whether you have red or green, is look at the games that you're playing. Does it support FSR or does it support DLSS? The game that you're going to be in the most. And then that's the thing to go and look at. If it doesn't support either of them, go and find out which one of the cards, whether it's one of the greens or the red, go and find out which one then performs better in that game. Because what you will find is, like Modern Warfare, if you're only going to be playing Modern Warfare, go and buy a 7600. get it on at 1080p, love it, live your life, and you're going to be fine. You do actually get FSR in Modern Warfare anyway, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. I'm not here to sell you this. I'm just here to show you the performance, which I'm trying to do, and maybe guide you a little bit and help you to make the decision on what card that you want. But overall, lots of results have gone live on the screen. I've probably stood in the wrong place for the graphs to have gone up in a tidy place, and you've had like hands coming out the side of the graphs or something. But overall, they do not use a lot of power. The temperatures are quite good, and that means whether not a massive card either, you could put them in a smaller case or a case that doesn't have so much airflow. Definitely not this one. To the point, I'm going to be open about it. I don't see that one as a card that you should buy at all. They shouldn't be bringing a card to the market that is going to hit its thermal limits at stock, and then the fans have got to do the rest of the coping. I just don't think that's right. And the 99-degree hotspot is just like a step too far. It needed a bigger, cooler Gigabyte. I'm sorry. Right. So whether it's this one or one of the other brands, I genuinely don't care. They'll definitely, more than likely, should be dealing with the temperatures a lot better, because I think this one is a fluke. I think this is something that they've not quite caught. Maybe they'll bring out a BIOS update for it or something, I don't know. But anyway, so it's a decent card for £289. I certainly wouldn't go buying any overclocked ones, because it doesn't make a lot of difference. I did have a tinker with it, and it was like a frame or two. It really wasn't worth bothering with. And the problem is, when it comes to cards like this, once they put this is an overclock card, but if you get one of the other brands where you've got the vanilla one and then it comes with an overclock, 9 times out of 10 what happens is you pay another £40 or £50 for exactly the same card. So get the MSRP card, save your money. That's genuinely going to be the best advice that I can give you. These can be difficult to get hold of after launch at MSRP. We're just going to have to see how many float around. But if you said to me, Tom, should I buy this card, I don't know, with a slightly different overclock on it, and it's £349, I'd say no. Actually, at that point, I think you should go and look and see if you can find an MSRP 4060 Ti instead, because there's only £100 between the two, and you do have to be sensible with where you spend your money. And I don't think it's worth paying more for a bigger cooler than this or a flashier cooler than this. At this price point, you want something that you can forget, and it's just going to work. Because I don't think that spending an extra £50 on a graphics card like this at this price range, you're not going to be building a rig for it to look amazing. And if you are and you want to do it, then crack the heatsink off it and paint it or something. I know you're going to say about warranty, but if aesthetics are your thing, you can add lights into it. You could put LED string lights through it or something if you wanted to. I don't think, if money is this tight, that spending an extra, like I said, £50 or £80 is really going to be worth it on, because this now lights up. It is also worth considering, with a very dirty interjection, that you can find a 6700 XT for just a bit more than one of these. I've looked around, you can find them for about $320. Now, a 6700 will use more power, it will be a bit warmer, but it will outperform one of these quite easily. The other side of it is, it can be, if you look in the graphs, it can be hit and miss whether it comes in, around or above the DLSS performance of these as well. So that is something to keep in mind. Keep your eye on the graphs. The 6700 is another one to consider if you're looking around this kind of price. Deep breaths. I know there has been an awful lot for you to digest in this. Probably going to upset some people that I've not hated, but I've tried to be as open and balanced and as honest as possible. I don't care whether you buy it, I don't care whether you don't buy it, but if you want to and I've helped you, then I've done my job. So, deep breaths, under £300, solid, decent frames per second, 1080p card that you can then, if you want to, and the game's dependent, still turn on the DLSS and DLSS 3 stuff and get even more frames per second. And we do need to remember that DLSS will minimise your impact on VRAM as well. So, positive stuff to be said and absorbed. I don't want another one like this for a while, because like, it is a shame. It is a shame. I'm very surprised with this. This doesn't happen very often. But this is a card that I would say I wouldn't buy if your case hasn't got a lot of airflow. This one's got loads and it's still cooked. It's just not going to be worth the risk. You will end up reducing performance because of this card, so I don't see the point. Gigabyte need to do something about it. So get something better, branded like this, with a decent cooler, whether it's this one or an MSI or a Gamewood or any of the other brands. That is the route that I would go. But I'm not going to waffle any longer. This has been Tiny Tom Logan with another video for you. Thank you for tuning in. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, and tell me all about the stuff that I've done wrong, said wrong, not tested, all of that stuff. Because I do actually like criticism and critique, because that's how we all learn and move forward. Thank you very much, everyone. Tiny Tom Logan out. Ding! Love you, sis.